My talk is The Triumph of Good Over Evil, and we are recognizing the Festival of Lights known as Diwali in the Hindu tradition. And it's India's biggest and most important holiday festival that they have each year. And it gets its name from these clay lamps that go out in front of their homes. And it symbolizes the inner light that protects from spiritual darkness. And the festival is as important in the Hindu tradition as Christmas is to Christianity. So it's a big deal. This festival lasts for 5 days. There's 2 days of preparation, just getting ready, cleaning the house, getting the fancy clothes and all of those things, preparing the feasts. Then the third day is the big day of celebration. That's when all the lights come out. That's when the food and the festivities and everything happen. The next 2 days are spent with family and friends in the exchange of gifts. So there's a whole week of celebration where they honor this idea of good triumphing over evil. And it's based on historic ancient old stories about epic tales of battles and betrayals and love reunited and things like that. And of course, India is such a large country, and they have different stories in different parts and different regions of the country, but they all have that common thread of good triumphing over evil and wisdom over wisdom and knowledge, and light over darkness. And we talked a lot about that last week with our Hanukkah discussion about the truth and the light and the wisdom and so forth. But this title, The Triumph of Good Over Evil, that's a pretty ancient story. It's the backdrop for much of everything from fairy tales to movies to novels to life experience. It's this idea of good over evil, light over darkness, the good guys winning, the white hats, and God defeating the devil, of course, is one that many of us were raised with in our faith traditions that we were born into. But my question for you today is this the truth? Is this the truth? Is there a cosmic battle of good and evil? Is there a cosmic battle of good and evil forces? Well, I see some of you shaking your head, and I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't believe in the devil. I don't believe in Satan. I don't believe in evil or an entity that is darkness. And that realization really came to me this week in preparing the talk, how anchored I really am in that teaching. It's not just words. When I prepare to do a talk, I sit down and I first think, what do I know about this topic? What do I know about it? And then, what are my beliefs around this? And finally, what do I have to share with the community about this? And then all of that goes into contemplation, of course, and I talked to Spirit for a while and asked Spirit, well, what would you like to say about this today, all right? What would you like to say around this? Well, many of you know, and again, the nodding of the heads here that I'm seeing, you've been in Science of Mind for a while, so you know that we don't really teach about evil as an entity. We don't teach about a devil or hell in our teaching. We teach about God. We teach about the light. We teach about the goodness. But I was really fascinated when I opened up the Science of Mind text and looked in the back in the concordance and saw Ernest Holmes certainly had a lot to say about evil for someone who didn't believe in it. So we're going to look and see some of his ideas about how it doesn't exist, So I wanted to start with his definition. We'll just go right to the glossary in the back of the book and go with his definition. He says that evil is that which seems destructive. Evil is an experience of the soul on its journey toward the realization of reality. Evil will remain a problem as long as we believe in it, as long as we give it energy. And isn't that true of most things? As long as we believe in it, as long as we give it energy, it can continue, we hold it in our vibration, we can continue to experience it. He goes on to say, but of itself it is neither person, place, nor thing, and will disappear in the exact proportion that we cease using destructive methods. Well, what does that mean? I'm not destructive, right? We're all sitting here thinking we're not destructive. So what does that mean? Well, it's easy to look outside of ourselves and say, that's evil, that's destructive, they're wrong. But what about within ourselves? We know in our teaching that everything begins within, right? It's within our own ideas, our own thinking. So the destructive methods of mind might be things like negative thinking. Negative thinking can be destructive, can it? When we think negatively about ourselves, when we're not in a loving place about ourselves, that can be very destructive. Physically, mentally, emotionally. And then when we take that into conversations with others around us, then that becomes destructive with the other person, doesn't it? And then we go even further and we take action. We take negative actions involving even more people. That can be the idea of this evil or destruction that Holmes is talking about. But in reality, it's our own beliefs, our own experiences, and our own perceptions, isn't it? As to what we interpret as bad, good, not good, evil, whatever terminology you want to use there. It's how we interpret it. Holmes is very clear that it is an experience, this idea of evil. It's an experience. It's not an entity. So how would you define that? Do you define it? Is it even in your awareness? I have friends that some of them believe in that, and we've had warm discussions around that and whether that is a true entity or not. And people that believe in it believe that it's very, very true. And if you're in that position this morning, I'm not saying that the bad things don't happen. All I'm saying is that in this teaching, we don't believe in an alternate to God. There's God and nothing else. God and nothing else. So how would you define it? Are there evil people in the world? Feels like it sometimes. We've all been on the receiving end of that. Maybe we've watched the news and we've seen things on the news that we go, wow, those are really some bad people, right? Really some bad people. But when I look at those situations and look behind it and behind it and behind it, we can recognize that it all starts with one person's decision, doesn't it? Someone made a negative decision to start believing a certain way, to start speaking a certain way, to start bringing others into that thinking, and then to bring them into action and activity. It starts with one person, doesn't it? One person's choice. And we can recall people that may still be called evil. Hitler comes to mind. It was a horrible time, wasn't it? It was a horrible time. He did horrible things. Did he think he was evil? In his mind, no. The people that implemented his policies, they must have believed in it, right? They thought it was the right thing to do. The people that were impacted by it, not so much. Not so much. The 9/11 attacks. That's in recent enough history for most of us in this room to have know where we were the day that happened. The people that did that, they took action on an idea that they had, that they thought, that they believed in, that they thought was right. Their perception and others' perceptions are totally different in that. Totally different in that. Some may say our current political climate in Washington, D.C. has tones and overnotes of this. France is experiencing some uprising and difficulties in their political system right now as well. All of these are different ways of looking at this idea of what is evil. Does it exist, or is it simply the choices that people are making that are being perceived as evil because it's not the way that I believe? Not the way that I believe. Last night, I watched a movie called The Post. Anybody seen that? It's the one about the Washington Post in 1971. Yeah, 1971. Many of us were around at that point, know what happened, but this was the movie version of it. And it was a revealing story about the actions of the White House administrations from 1945 to 1967, around the Vietnam War. There had been a study requisitioned about how each of these presidencies had directed their policies towards the war and the things that they were gleaning out of these studies now. And the New York Times got called into court by the White House, and then the Washington Post decided they were going to publish part of the study also, even recognizing they might also get called into court. But it was interesting to look at this from the idea of perception and perspective, because the Washington Post was a little paper at that time. Their idea was, this is a way for us to make front page, so to speak, by printing this story. We also risk going to jail and losing everything. But then the New York Times and the Washington Post and many other papers at the same time said, hey, wait a minute, this is about freedom of speech. This is about our First Amendment rights. We've got to do this. So they took a position with that. The White House, meanwhile, is going, we're going to haul you to court. No, 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 because you can't embarrass us. You can't reveal all of this information to America. They can't handle it, right? So these opposing perspectives about what was right. What was right. Evil? They probably thought each other was pretty evil during that time, right? I mean, I see some stuff on Facebook today where there's some stuff flying around about our current administration that people think there's evil there. You know, there's a group that says yes, there's a group that says no. It's all this idea of perception. It's all the idea of perception. So it would seem that evil, much like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. It's in the eye of the beholder. Now, many of us have a common belief. We have common values and morals even that we share, where we can begin to sort and sift and go, well, yeah, this could be considered evil and this could not. But when we can elevate ourselves to this higher elevation, higher realm of recognizing it's all God, we are all spirit in form, we are all one in the wholeness of the oneness, let's all make better decisions and better choices. Because we are God beings of choice. We are God beings of choice. There is a very thin line in the science of mind. We've talked about this a lot in the past few weeks about what we focus on expands, right? We've talked about that. And there's a fine line between focusing on what it is that we want and getting tangled up in the resistance to what's there. Tangled up in the resistance to what's there. And sometimes when, like our dog here, right? He's not fighting those lights, is he? He's not trying to get them off of him. He's just focusing on what he wants. Somebody please take pity on my poor little face here and come get me out of these lights. Right? Don't you want to help him? Whereas if he was snarling and barking and biting and tearing at those lights, you wouldn't want to get near him, would you? Because he's in resistance to it. He's in resistance to it. Teaching our minds to focus on what we want and not the thing that's bonking us in the head is one of the most challenging pieces of this teaching. It's one of the most challenging teaches, one of the toughest challenges, but the benefits are immense when we can do it. And the trick to doing it is to do the practice in the good times. In the good times. Many of us use science of mind as an emergency room. Whoops, life's not going my way, I need some prayer. As opposed to the daily practice. And when we have our daily discipline, our spiritual discipline each and every day, being grateful in the good times, doing our spiritual practice, building our spiritual discipline, our spiritual muscles, then when things do get tough, we're ready. We're prepared. We're strong to be able to step into then our spiritual practice on an even deeper level because we've built our spiritual muscles. We've built our spiritual muscles. So the science of mind teaches that God is all there is. You heard that in Joanne's prayer this morning. It's one of the core concepts that we teach, that there's nothing except God. And that's what we're talking about today, not God and anything else. We also teach that evil is an experience of our choices. It's an experience of our freedom to choose. But does that make it any easier to accept the negative experiences that come into our lives? Holmes says, if it's true that God is good and God wants us to have everything that is good, why does God create us and let us suffer? We've all probably asked that question at some point in our lives. How could a loving God allow this to happen? Holmes suggests that it's because we're individuals, because we have been blessed with this individuality of life, because we've been blessed with the freedom to choose. To be an individual means we must always have the right of self-choice. Had God created us to be mechanical, we would not have been an individual. He says the planet is mechanical. It has to be and has to do what it does. It cannot move out of its course. The planet, but we can. God could not make a mechanical individual. That is an absolute impossibility, and since God could not make us mechanical, so we had to go one way. God had to make us and let us go the way we choose. Let us go the way we choose. Holmes used the word automaton, which I guess was a word back in the 30s and 40s, that we could not be automatons. We are given the freedom of choice. We're given the laws of the universe to work with through the creative process to design the life that we choose. It's funny how Spirit created us as individuals, free thinkers, unique, and what are we doing right now? We're trying to create robots who are human-like, who have artificial intelligence. I just find that very fascinating that we're unique and individualized and we're trying to manufacture now humanoids that are more human-like. But thank goodness that we're individuals and that we can find peace with each other when we can recognize that we're all having our own individual experience of life. That we're all having our own individual experience of life. And if someone is having an experience of life that doesn't work with my life or work with your life, it's like the TV, we can turn the channel. We can turn the channel. We can have a conversation. We can try and work it out. But if we're at an impasse, then we can choose to turn the channel. So the practice of the principles of the science of mind is based on the idea, based on the concept that God is where we are and what we are. That we are spirit in form, and that there isn't anything else. We've all heard that before, haven't we? We've heard that before. Holmes says that our whole concept is partially based on the theory that whatever appears to be wrong is not wrong in itself, it's in the wrong arrangement of what's right. That's classic Ernest, but I love that. It's the wrong arrangement of what's right, and we've got a picture of some flowers here. Roses are roses, roses are beautiful, but that's not a very appealing arrangement, is it? It's sort of the wrong arrangement of what's right. This is a much more appealing arrangement of those flowers. A much more appealing arrangement. There's not God in something else. There's no such thing as good or evil in itself. That's a big statement that Holmes makes. There is no such thing as good or evil in itself. There is only what is. That's a big concept, isn't it? There's only what is, which automatically and mechanically reports from itself or interprets itself to us the way we look at it. Back to perception again. It's what is, it's how I perceive it, it's how I think about it, it's what I believe about it. That I then classify it as right or wrong, good, evil. I like it, I don't like it. It's lima beans, no thank you, right? We get to choose. That's the beauty of life, we get to choose. So universal truth, universal law, those are the things that we live within here, that we operate within. Universal truth, universal law, the law of correspondence, the law of reflection, as we believe. These are the core ideas and the understandings in the basics of the science of mind that we teach. It is done unto us as we believe. It is done unto us as we believe. And we see who and what we are, and life reflects back to us that which we believe. And I'm frequently challenged by these concepts. Many of us that have been in the teaching for a while will get questioned. Somebody's in pain. The last thing they want to hear is, well, how's this a reflection of your beliefs? It's not very compassionate, is it? It's not the thing to say. However, I use this practice in my own life. I ask myself this throughout the day. How is this a reflection of me? How is this a reflection of me? Frequently, I can't see it. I don't want to see it. And if I do see it, I'm going to deny it. Right? But eventually, I will get to the me-ness in that situation. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's the only way I can recognize what it is, shine the light on it, and heal it. It's the only way. Practicing that with ourselves. Self-healing. It's another one of those tools that I use. So it's a simple teaching. Yes. Not always easy to implement. Requires spiritual discipline and practice and a willing heart and a willing mind to live it. That's what we require here. So I want to move into our practicing the principles. I've got 3 of them for you this week. Evil is an experience. Evil is an experience. It's not a thing. No boogeyman, no devil, no Satan. It's an experience. Not person, place, or thing. If you find yourself in an experience that you consider evil, usually it's the effect of someone else. And try not to get tangled up in it. Focus again on what you want instead versus that tangle of resistance to what's in front of us. And when life shows up other than we want it, remember the process. Remember the process. We just plant a new seed. We don't have to dig up the old plant that we don't like, do we? We don't have to dig that thing up. We just let it have its way, and it will wither and go away out of our experience. And we nourish and water, and I'm losing it, nourish and water the seed that we are now planting, the newness that we now want to receive. Number 2, why does God let me struggle? Well, as a minister, I ask you that all the time. Hey, wait a minute. Remember Holmes' example. The earth is mechanical and I am too, yes. Mechanical. Oops. Got a pretzel. Okay. Holmes' example. The earth is mechanical and it operates without choice or free will. The seasons change automatically, don't they? Thank goodness. We don't have to do anything. Oh, flip the switch. I forgot to flip the switch. It's not summer now. That'd be okay though, wouldn't it? The seasons change automatically. Humans are the highest manifestation of spirit and form, and we're gifted with that choice. We're gifted with free will. And sometimes we choose by mistake or choose unwisely. Has anybody else besides me ever done that? Once, maybe. Yeah, okay, fine. But we do, and we know that the universe is loving and supportive. And when we choose awry, we can re-choose. That's the beauty of having this freedom, of living within this creative process, of understanding these tools and principles. The creative process, the action of universal law, is automatic, not only for seasons, but in our lives. In our lives. It's almost like put another quarter in the jukebox. Everybody remember jukeboxes? You know, you want a different song, you punch a different button, plant a different seed, create a different manifestation. And unless you absolutely believe in your soul in instant manifestation, it could take a little time. It could take a little time. Number 3, there is no good or evil as an entity. There is no good or evil as an entity. There is only what is and how we interpret that. So ask yourself that question sometime when you're watching the news and you're inflamed by some story that has come up. Ask yourself, what is my interpretation of what's happening here? Can I take this experience deeper? Can I move through my anger into understanding? Can I find compassion, perhaps, for the turmoil, the torment in that person who decided to do that thing that I disagree with? Can I find reason in what they chose to do? Expansive questions. Nothing is wrong, but is only the wrong arrangement of what is right. If I truly believe that it is all God, where is God in this situation? Good is triumphant, and our work in the world is to be the light for ourselves and for others, to look for the good. Look for the good, and when we look for the good, we will find more good. And always choose kindness. Always choose kindness. There are not two powers, there's only one. God is all there is, and I choose to focus on the good. So I want to close today with a final quote from Margaret Thatcher. Remember Maggie Thatcher? She said, "I'm in politics because of the conflict between good and evil, and I believe that in the end, good will triumph." So may good triumph in your life all week this week. And so it is. So would you join me in an affirmative prayer, please, this morning? How good it is that we come together on Sunday to celebrate life, to celebrate each other, to celebrate this community, to celebrate joy, and to celebrate the light of this season that we are immersed in right now as we are headed into the darkest days physically of the year. I just recognize that there's nothing but God. There's nothing but light. There's nothing but love. And all of that is right here present in this room and through and as me, as an expression of it, uniquely made manifest. As I know that truth of myself, I know that truth for each one of us in this room, that we are each a unique manifestation of the one high God, that we are whole, perfect, and complete in that manifestation, that we are love, we are harmony, we are balance, we are peace, and we are that light in expression. And so as I know this truth for each of us this day, I speak my word for and about each one of us, knowing, claiming, and accepting the absolute illumination of our lives this week, as we know that good is all that there is. And we focus on that good as an expression of ourselves, of our hearts, of our minds, of our words, of our deeds and actions. And we look for that in others. We look for that light in others, knowing that what we look for, we find. And so I know that if anyone in the room today has anything on their heart that they are seeking prayer support around, that as they lift that into their minds, that we lift it into this prayer, knowing that it is healing revealed, that it is wholeness, it is health, it is abundance and prosperity, it is revelation of truth, it is clarity, whatever the need might be, it is healed in this moment as we accept the truth of the perfection of our own being. So it is with a grateful heart that I just simply release this into the activity of mind, knowing that it is already done, it is already complete. The word spoken is the word made manifest. And we affirm that together by saying, and so it is.